episode 100. Here we go. Welcome to the Adoption Roadmap Podcast, your go-to guide through the beautiful, complex, and transformative journey of adoption. I'm Rebecca Gruenspan, a single mom through adoption consultant for over a decade, author of the Adoption Roadmap book, and your trusted guide. In each episode, we dive into real experiences, expert insights, and the raw, honest truths that you will need to navigate your journey. Whether you're just beginning, in the thick of it, or well past placement, you'll find support and community here to help you navigate this unique path with confidence and love. Adoption isn't all rainbows and butterflies. It is life-changing and worth every bit of effort. Let's learn, grow, and journey together on the Adoption Roadmap Podcast. Episode 100. I can hardly believe it. I had been sitting on the idea of doing a podcast for about 3 years before I actually did it. Literally, it was sitting in our goals year after year after year. And I was too scared to do it. It felt too overwhelming. I didn't know how I was going to do all the tech. And you know what? Everybody had the best advice for me. I don't know if I always took it. They said, just do it. It doesn't matter. People don't care if it's a recording on Zoom or Riverside, which is what I'm using now, or just from your phone. Just get started. Don't let anything hold you back. I am beyond amazed and excited that here I am after 100 episodes, and I think I've talked to almost 50 people interviews, and I've done some on my own. And you guys, I am loving every minute of it. If you are too, and you haven't yet left me a review and a rating, please. It really helps me. And I would just ask you for this little favor. It will take 20 seconds. If you could please do that, that would mean the world to me. The more people who write reviews, the more people it gets out to. And if you know anything about social media these days, it is not easy to reach new people. So that would be doing me a big favor. What I thought I would do today is give you a recap of every single episode where I got to interview a guest. So here we go. Stick with me, and I'm going to give you the dates and everything. So if there's something that you are particularly interested in, you can go back easily and find them. So my very first episode was with the executive director of Connecting Hearts Adoption Services on May 29th, 2024 with Amy Imber. It's called Home Study, the First Step in Adoption with Amy Imber. And we talk everything adoption, and that's her whole company. She only does adoptions, and we dispel common fears about the adoption home study process. She shares about her personal journey in adoption, and one of my very favorite parts of this episode is the funniest story that she tells. I think I asked her, do you have a good story about one that you remember? And she had a pretty funny story. So I know it's been one of the most listened to episodes. People are very anxious and interested about learning about the home study. So go and listen to that one and let me know if you thought it was as funny as I did. You'll know what part I'm talking about. And one thing she said is that the home study is always the first step in any adoption because no agency or attorney can actively work with a family until they are home study approved. Next up, single motherhood, the challenges and advantages with my very good friend, Kerry Hackett. Kerry and I went through, we were kind of at the same time going through infertility and adoption, and I was a little bit ahead of her. And we became the closest of friends. That episode was June 5th, 2024. And because we're such good friends, it was a really fun episode to watch. So I suggest you watch that one on Spotify or YouTube. Kerry's a single mom through domestic adoption. And the two of us together, I'm also a single mom, discuss her motivation for pursuing adoption as a single parent. We talked about the challenges and the rewards that we have both experienced along the way. And Kerry said adoption is not for the faint of heart. It's hard, and there can be a lot of disappointments along the way, but I just kept going and going. Nothing could change my mind that I wanted to be a mom. So go listen. Any hopeful single moms, that's a great episode for you. Next up on June 12th, 2024 was with Linda Sexton, somebody I met online, and she talks about open adoption, the importance of authenticity. Linda is an engineer turned adoptive mom, author, and advocate, and she shares her experiences with open adoption and really emphasizes the importance of authenticity and finding the right match. She has grown children now. She adopted multiple times, and she has learned so much over the years about open adoption. And we really talk about the way she matched and the way she really set the foundation for her relationship with her kids' birth family. She says you have to just be your authentic self. Great piece of advice. You just have to be your authentic self, whoever you are. It's got to be the right match. And she also said nobody's looking for perfection. In fact, they're looking for the opposite. Next up was with who has become a good friend, and we've done multiple things together now, Allison Olson, on June 19th, 2024. The title of that one was Balancing the Adoption Narrative. Allison Olson is an adoptee, adoptive mom, a children's book author, and she's even authored a journal that we have used with our families as gifts. So if you are thinking about adoption and you want to get a beautiful gift from us via Allison Olson, let's discuss. She discusses the importance of changing the narrative around open and closed adoption, and also how to support children's connections to their birth families. One of the things she says in the episode is everyone thinks of open versus closed adoption as a light switch. It's not. It's a dimmer switch. Nothing can undo all the love you've given your child. Nothing. Supporting their connection to their birth family does not take away anything. It grows their capacity to be loved. I love that. My fifth interview was with my good friend, Catherine Russell, and she is a wealth of knowledge. She is a social worker. She has been working in adoption for a long time. And as somebody who is not personally connected to the adoption triad, she is a gold mine of knowledge and wealth. And she is talking about something that's not talked about very often. The title of this episode is Navigating Power Dynamics in Adoption, A Tale of Two Mothers, with Catherine Russell on June 26th, 2024. Power dynamics is a real thing, and it gets in the way throughout your journey. So if you are not familiar with who's holding the power at what time, at what moments during your journey, you're going to have a really tough time, and you need to know how to navigate those power dynamics. Catherine's a social worker, and she helps to unravel the intricate dynamics of adoption and the importance of openness and communication between the adoptive family and the birth family. She has used a phrase in this episode that I have now used in my membership. She says, you need to act in a way that tells your child's birth parent, my porch light is on. If you want to come around, come around. If you can't, I understand, but my light is always on. I love that concept of leaving your porch light on. And it's something that I am now using as in our community. We have started to use something like what we call porch light moments. And that is that whole idea of keeping the porch light on and keeping your hearts and your minds open. And Catherine says openness is not a one-time conversation. It's a lifelong invitation. Openness is not a one-time conversation. It's a lifelong invitation. Brilliant, brilliant words by my friend, Catherine Russell. All right, I just have to say, for those of you watching, you might notice that suddenly I have all these wet spots all over my shirt. And that's because I paused, ran to pick up my son, and it is raining outside. So here we are back at our recap episode with Kate Shanahan on July 3rd, 2024. Building resilience and embracing diversity. She shares her own journey through infertility, cancer, and then ultimately adoption. She discusses the challenges and rewards of transracial adoption, the importance of cultural education, and Kate's mission to support other adoptive families through the company that she formed with a friend of hers called Sweet Peachtree Marketplace. And I do want to give a shout out to Sweet Peachtree. If you've been listening for a while, you may have heard a commercial for Sweet Peachtree. Kate has set out to really develop and partner with people who make great, clean skincare products and hair care products for Black hair care and skincare and everybody. Please go check out Sweet Peachtree Marketplace. And if you do purchase and use the code Adoption Roadmap, you will get 10% off. In that episode with Kate Shanahan, she said, I realized I wasn't on the wrong seat of the bus. I was on the wrong bus. I love that quote. And then she also said, Emmy, her daughter, once told me she didn't want to be brown. Now she rolls down the window to tell strangers they have beautiful brown skin. She's come a long way. I love that. July 10th, 2024 was with a past client of ours, Whitney Michael. That episode is called From Private Adoption to Foster Care Adoption. And in this episode, Whitney recounts her family's transition from private adoption with its financial and emotional losses moving into foster care adoption. She highlights the realities of both systems, the importance of community, and the lessons learned about flexibility and compassion. So she did stop the domestic adoption process, the private process, and go into foster to adopt. And she talks about that. In fact, she says, we lost about $25,000. It felt like another loss of a baby in a way. I'm sure some of you can relate. All right, the next episode I'm going to talk about is with Lucrease Bundy on July 17th, 24, called A Crucial Step Most Families Who Are Adopting Overlook. Adoption attorney Lucrease Bundy explains why education and planning should come before the home study, and I couldn't agree more. She covers the power of word of mouth, financial and legal considerations, and the importance of emotional readiness and community support. Some of the things she said was the biggest mistake families make is doing their home study first. Your home study is tailored to the type of adoption you choose. And then she says, don't underestimate the power of the old school, just telling people that you're adopting, and you might be surprised at the possible matches that come up. The next episode on July 24th, 24, so it's 7/24/24, is Accessing Early Intervention Support with Maureen Dykinga. Adoptive parents who just adopted. You have a baby at home, or you are about to adopt. Please go listen to this episode from July 24th, 2024. Early intervention is something you need to know about and you need to be taking advantage of. So go listen to this. Dr. Maureen Dikinga is a pediatric speech language pathologist, and she discusses the importance of early intervention for adopted children. Go listen to this episode. She gives us a lot of practical advice on communication, feeding, and developmental milestones, and encourages parents to advocate for their children's needs. This is a must listen. She says, great communication starts with being a good adult communication partner. And she talks about that. I love that. You don't need to wait for failure to seek support. Dr. Dikinga says, intervene early. Services are designed to prevent delays, not just react to them. Next interview I had was with financial expert Matt Joyner on July 31st, 2024, called Smart Money Moves for Adoption. During this episode, Matt Joyner shares his own personal adoption story, and he offers some really great expert advice on preparing financially for adoption. He explains the adoption tax credit, talks about some common pitfalls, and the importance of early planning as well as self-awareness. So if money is of concern, and I don't know many people that it's not, go listen to Matt Joyner's episode from July 31st, 2024. One of the things he says in this episode is the first step in adoption planning is acknowledging that this is your goal, because the earlier you start, the longer your money has to work for you. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. The next episode was on August 7th, 2024 with Diana Schimmel, Navigating Legal Hurdles in Adoption. I got to know Diana through, I think helpusadopt.org had an organization with professionals, and I got to know Diana. She's an adoption attorney in New Jersey. We talked about the importance of seeking legal advice early in the adoption process and why she thinks that's important. We talk about the role of an adoption attorney and the timing of involving an attorney. This episode covers identified adoptions, interstate adoption laws, revocation periods, building relationships with professionals, choosing the right attorney, contested adoptions, and post-adoption contact agreements. We talked about a lot, and Diana provided really valuable insights for prospective adoptive parents. She said in there, just because something is legally the first step doesn't mean it's the right first step. So go listen to that episode to find out what she's talking about. Next is an episode with somebody who has become a good friend, Francine Appy, on August 14th, 2024. That episode is called When Things Go Right in Adoption. And I just love her whole platform is talking about the positive in adoption instead of focusing on all of the more difficult through lines and the negative, the things that can be construed as negative, or the negative things out there. Francine is the founder of Soul Filling, and she shares about her adoption journey. She has multiple children through adoption, 3 to be exact. She talks about the unique qualities in each of her children, the lessons she's learned, and we explore open adoption, normalizing adoption conversations, as well as amplifying positive stories. Francine is also a children's book author, has a fantastic book, and the conversation also highlights faith, mindset, and the ongoing nature of adoption stories. One of the things that I said, one of my favorite quotes that I say to our clients all the time, and I said it in this episode, is as soon as you can let go of control, that's when the magic happens. And Francine said, families come together in all kinds of ways. this was how ours was meant to. The next episode on August 21st, 2024, another great friend of mine. I am so lucky to have amazing friends who are connected to adoption and agreed to be part of my podcast. Natalie Bauman and I talked about exploration, discovery, and complexity in adoption. On August 21st, 2024, Natalie is both an adoptee and an adoptive parent. She shared her journey to find her biological parents and her decision to adopt. We talked about transracial adoption, confronting biases, preserving adoptees' stories, very important conversation, and the importance of supportive communities. Again, this community thing comes up. Natalie's story includes a DNA discovery and reflections on ethical storytelling. And she says, adoption is not the evil entity, it's a pathway to a different future for a child. There's a responsibility you take on when you adopt a child of a different race to immerse yourself in how they're going to walk in the world. Go listen to that episode. It's a great one, and she's a wonderful storyteller. The next episode is one of my tried and trues. Again, Ben Greenberg and Dan Miller. This one was interesting. This one was kind of a back and forth conversations I had with two single adoptive dads. They share about their experiences both going through the process and as single dads through adoption, discussing their unique challenges, joys, and misconceptions that they have faced. They offer advice to single men considering adoption, something we never hear about, the importance of support networks, again, and preparing for unique needs of adopted children, especially in transracial and international contexts. One of them, they're both transracial adoptions, one international, one local or domestic, I should say. One of them had a great quote in this episode where he said, parenting is not what you want, it's what your child needs. I love that. So true. Truer words. What is it? Truer words have never been spoken. Something like that. Okay, the next episode with Tamika Swint. She's one of my faves. September 4th, 24. This one was all about hair care. She is the founder of Styles for Kids, and the episode is called Beyond the Hair, Transforming Lives Through Cultural Connection and Transracial Adoption. Tamika and I discussed the deep cultural significance of hair in the Black community, the challenges faced by white adoptive parents, and the importance of education and advocacy for transracial adoptive parents. She shares her journey from a simple hair braiding class to leading a nationwide movement supporting Black children's cultural identity. Some of the memorable quotes in this episode is, people think it's just about hair. It's so much deeper. Hair is the sounding board. And from there, it goes into self-image, identity, peer pressure, connection to culture. If you're not able to express yourself through hair, it impacts every other area. This episode, if you are a transracial parent of a Black child in particular, and you don't have a good grasp on hair, please go listen to this episode and go check out Styles for Kids. She also says your child is going to be in the world as a Black person. That means they need to have pride in who they are, and that starts with their hair. The next episode, Back to Money and Finances, on September 11th, 2024, with Kelly Ellison, the founder of Your Adoption Finance Coach. This episode is called Adoption Without Financial Stress: Insider Tips to Make Your Dream Family a Reality. She shares practical strategies for affordable adoption. She debunks financial myths, and Kelly highlights the importance of planning, budgeting, and leveraging employer benefits. She emphasizes perseverance and the evolving landscape of family building support. She says, don't give up and don't miss this moment. Before you know it, you'll be walking the floors at 3 a.m., bone tired and grateful. And ain't that the truth? On September 18th, I spoke with one of our past clients, Kate Papkin. This one's called Overcoming Cancer, Finding Strength, and Building a Family Through Adoption. Kate Papkin is a cancer survivor, breast cancer survivor, shares her journey through cancer, infertility, and adoption, much like Kate Shanahan in an earlier episode. Kate discusses the importance of self-advocacy, resilience, and gratitude, and how adoption brought completeness to her family. She says you have to push for yourself and not care what other people think about it. Just know that you did everything that you could to control your outcome. A to the men, Kate Papkin. Okay, the next two episodes were with none other than Damon Davis. The two episodes were on September 25th and October 2nd, 2024. Finding Your Roots, Discovering Identity and Connection in Adoption with Damon Davis. In this episode, Damon talks about identity. He is an adoptee himself, as well as an adoptive dad. He is the creator of the podcast, Who Am I Really? If you've never listened to it, go listen to it. He does a fantastic job at really capturing these stories of adoptees. In our episodes, he not only shares his adoption journey, the emotional journey he had of reuniting with his bio family, and the complexities of identity for adoptees. This episode highlights the importance of community. This is a common theme, openness, and the role of adoptive parents in supporting their children's search for identity and biological roots. He shares his own experience growing up with an adoptive mom who struggled with mental illness. This was a really interesting story. The challenges of searching for his birth mom and the importance of self-reflection and open communication in adoption, and really explores balancing expectations, preparing for reunions, and the healing process for adoptees as well as adoptive parents. Some of the things that he said in these episodes: you're the only one inside your head talking to yourself. Sometimes you have to get those stories out of your head to bounce them off of someone else. About parenting, he says one of the hardest things to do is release your child and stop being their parachute. Woo! That one hits home for me. And then he says, Who Am I Really? Is far more fundamental for adoptees. When you're adopted, you're a branch on someone else's family tree, but you don't know whose tree that is. Go listen to those episodes with Damon Davis. All right, the next one on October 9th was an amazing conversation with Tarsha Smith called The Transformative Power of Embracing Your Story. Tarsha is a wellness coach as well as a podcast host. Her podcast is called Journey to Adoption, another fantastic podcast. She really focuses on the Black adoptee voice. She herself is a Black adoptee raised in a predominantly white community. She shares the challenges of navigating identity, again, reunion with her birth family, and the importance of transparency and storytelling in adoption. This episode really explores the nuances of adoption within the Black community and the healing power of embracing one's own story. And she'll say everyone's story is different and valid. She also said, I was so excited about being adopted, I took it as my show and tell. The next episode was with none other than our podcast editor and marketing manager for RG Adoption Consulting, Josie Me. This episode is called Embracing Heritage and Crafting Identity. Josie is a Chinese-American adoptee. She shares her journey of self-discovery, growing up as a transracial adoptee, and reconnecting with her heritage through cooking and community. The episode discusses the significance of cultural identity, the challenges of growing up in a predominantly white space, and the importance of self acceptance for adoptees as well as adoptive parents. And about cooking, she said, cooking became a healing ritual. It was the first time I reconnected with my culture on my own terms. Love that. October 23rd, 2024, The Shift in Adoption Practices with Lori Shelton. She is an adoption specialist and has worked in the world of adoption for a very long time. And she discusses this again is one of our top listened podcast episodes. If you haven't listened to it yet, go do it. She really talks through the evolution of adoption practices, the shift from closed to open adoption, and the importance of what she deems ethical practices, as well as support for birth parents. She reflects on her personal experience with burnout working in this industry, is something I can totally relate to, and her commitment to really making a positive change in the adoption industry. She says adoption is beautiful and it's really hard. And if you can't hold both of those at the same time, you're going to miss something important. She also says, I used to think love was enough, but love doesn't erase loss. Profound, profound words. My next episode on October 30th, 2024, was with Jennifer Kelly, navigating medically complex adoptions. She is truly an expert in this, and that this was a really interesting conversation. She works at an adoption agency. She specializes in medically complex adoptions. She also helps find families for children who are going to be born or who have been born with medical complexities. So if that is you, go take a listen to this episode. She discusses the challenges and rewards of adopting children with medical complexities. We talk about evolving language around special needs adoption, the importance of advocacy, and the lifelong journey of supporting medically complex children. Jennifer says adoption is joy and grief holding hands. We wouldn't have our children without their loss, and that's a tension we have to live with. The quotes from these episodes are amazing. She says, these kids are not broken. They are whole and worthy exactly as they are. Amen. Okay, we are coming toward the end of 2024. Before we go on, we're going to take a quick break, but don't go away. We still have so much to talk about. Hey there, Adoption Roadmap fam. Are you ready to take the next step on your journey to parenthood? If so, head over to our website and take our quiz. It's called, Are You Ready to Adopt? It's not just about testing your knowledge. It's about making sure you're emotionally and practically prepared for the beautiful, complex journey of adoption. Let's make your dream of parenthood a reality. Go to rgadoptionconsulting.com and take the Are You Ready to Adopt quiz today. That's rgadoptionconsulting.com. The quiz is free, and it will let you know where you are in the process and if you're ready to jump into your adoption journey. Okay, we are coming toward the end of 2024. The episode on November 6th, 2024 with Lindsay Brueggemann. Lindsay's episode is called How Social Media Can Lead to Adoption Success, which she had through social media. She self-matched twice using Facebook and Instagram, and she offers practical advice for hopeful adoptive parents, including strategies for building engagement, avoiding scams, and maintaining authenticity online. The episode highlights the importance of consistency, patience, and being true to oneself in the adoption process. And she gave some great advice. She is really, obviously, it worked for her twice. I also want to put a plug in that at Our Chosen Child, a company who creates adoption profiles, they have also created a plug and play 6-month social media calendar. literally every post that you need for 6 months where you can just plug and play. Post it and you're good. Plug in your picture and you're good. It tells you exactly what to do for 6 months. I will link that in the show notes, but also if you go check out ourchosenchild.com, you will find that 6-month social media calendar. It's brilliant. Lindsay says, I really think at the end of the day, the best thing we ever did was show up and be consistent. On November 13th, 2024, I talk with one of my favorite adoptees, Ramya Gruenspan, who recently got engaged. So shout out to her. Congratulations. On November 13th, that episode was called Joy, Grief, and Growth in Transracial Adoption. She is an international transracial adoptee and advocate. She discusses the complexities of adoption, the dual experience of joy and grief, and the importance of education and support for adoptive parents. She emphasizes the value of therapy, humility, and responsible storytelling in adoption. She says, if you're an adoptive parent, you take on the responsibility of doing adoption education and advocacy. Then we paused for the end of season 1, started season 2 with a bang on January 15th with Simon Ben, an adoptee, another podcast host. He explores the definitions of trauma, the importance of understanding one's own emotional baggage as an adoptive parent, and the journey toward healing. He shares his personal experience and practical strategies for adoptive parents to support their children. That episode is called Understanding Adoption Trauma with Simon Ben. And he says, trauma to me seems to be a toxic cocktail of shame, fear, anger, and insecurity. But we are the glass, not its content. We're not our trauma. The clouds are not who we are. They're just passing through. My next episode is with adoptive dad and author of a children's book, Jeff Dunn. It's called Lessons from a Transracial Adoptive Dad and Author. This was a fun conversation, and again, something different. I don't often get to talk to dads. And he's an adoptive dad of 4. He's an adoptive dad and has 4 children. They're not all 4 adopted. But he talks about his family journey through adoption. He discusses the unique bonds formed through adoption, the challenges they faced through the process, and the importance of open conversation about race and identity. He shares his insights about navigating the adoption process, which was great from a guy's point of view. He talks about the role of consultants and also the significance of supporting children through their unique experiences. He wrote a book called A Buffalo Out of Water, which addresses themes of belonging and identity in adoption. The conversation really emphasizes the love and resilience found in adoptive parents and offers valuable advice for hopeful adoptive parents as well. And in this episode, he talks about how his daughter, who is not adopted, once said to him, "I'm not special. There's nothing different about me." And I think this is a theme that sometimes happens with siblings. When you have some children who were adopted and some that weren't, sometimes the bio kids feel like they're out of place. And then the other thing he said is, hang in there, be gentle with yourself. It can be a hard road. The next episode on January 29th, 2025, another adoptee, this time a Canadian Haitian adoptee, and also a birth mom, Helena Angela. Her episode is called The Truth About Birth Moms. She shares her journey through adoption, the duality of joy and pain, and the importance of community and support. She reflects on her closed adoption. That's a theme we haven't really touched on yet until now. Her desire to learn about her heritage and the beauty of her open adoption with her son. She also says, and we've heard something like this before, adoption is joy on one hand and pain, grief, and loss on the other. Birth moms don't all look or live one way. We come from all walks of life. Ain't that the truth? The next episode on February 5th, staying with that theme of birth moms. This adoption story will change how you see birth moms is the title of this episode with Katie Kinarans. I'm not saying that right. Mejia, I got right. With Katie Mejia. I love this lady so much. She is a birth mom advocate. She shares her journey of placing her twins for adoption, the stigma surrounding birth mothers, and the importance of community support. She discusses the healing power of sharing stories and the need for open communication in adoption relationships. She was a birth mom through rape, and she talks about that story as well. This is a really important one. I suggest everybody go listen to this episode with Katie Mejia. She says it's going to be hard and it's going to be okay. That is something she heard and she said to herself. She said, attachment is everything. It's the gravity that holds our relationships together. The next one is Sarah Cole, who I met at a conference, and she did a podcast episode, and now she's one of the experts in my adoption community, the Adoption Continuum. This episode on February 12th, 2025 is called Why Adoptive Parenting is Different and More. Parenting coach Sarah Cole discusses the unique challenges and joys of adoptive parenting, the importance of attachment, and the need for parents to understand their children's unique needs. She emphasizes mindfulness, psychological intimacy, and the significance of celebrating small wins in parenting. Absolutely. Sarah says, when we start to see and celebrate those little things, when we start to reframe what we're hearing, I notice that parents settle down. Simple is not easy. A lot of us know what to do. It's just easier to yell down the stairs than to actually connect. I can speak to that. Our next episode with another international adoptee, Camlee Small, called The Hard Truth About Adoption, Trauma, and Healing on February 19th, 2025. Camlee is not only a Korean American transracial adoptee, he is also a licensed clinical counselor, and he discusses with us the complexities of adoption, the emotional journey of adoptees, and the significance of adoption literacy. He shares personal experiences with reunion, identity, and the need for empathy and support. And one of the things I love that he said in this episode is belonging is a very fluid term. On February 26th, 2025, a force to be reckoned with. This episode called The Price of Parenthood, Why Adoption Costs So Damn Much, with Becky Fawcett from helpusadopt.org. She is the founder. She is an adoptive mom, and she discusses the financial barriers to adoption. She debunks myths and highlights how helpusadopt.org is making adoption more accessible. She shares her personal journey and advocacy for systemic change in adoption. And she says, adoption is expensive, prohibitively expensive. True that. In my episode on March 5th, 2025, Season 2, I get to sit down with my colleague, team member, and lead consultant, Rachel Patton, in an episode called How Adoption Consultants Make Your Journey Easier. This was juicy. I loved this conversation. Rachel is not only an adoptive mom, she is also a seasoned adoption consultant and adoption professional with nearly 20 years of experience, maybe even more by now, in the field of adoption. She has worked with birth moms and adoptive parents. She has worked at agencies and is now a consultant. So together, we really unpack the emotional, the practical, and the ethical complexities of adoption, from supporting expectant moms to parenting adopted children in a transracial family. We do not hold back. If you are thinking about using a consultant or want to know what we can help with, go listen to this episode from March 5th, 2025 with Rachel Patton. We talk about why to use a consultant, what makes a good client and a challenging client. We talk about infertility and adoption. Can you do both at the same time? We cover privilege, control, and expectations. We talk about trauma awareness and parenting and open adoption and transracial adoption. We cover so much. And Rachel says adoption alone without any fertility, anything is a lot. So if you're going to do it, give it 100%. She also said, secrets are the reason there were so many adopted kids in treatment centers, because they didn't know who they were or why they weren't wanted. Go listen to that episode. And then on March 12th and 19th is a two-parter. Is Utah really the Wild West of adoption? That's right. I caused a little controversy, and I know that people were talking about it, both positive and negative, and that's okay, because that's what podcasting is for, to bring the controversy and talk about it in a nice way. So in this episode, I talked with Donna Pope, Executive Director of Heart to Heart Adoptions in Utah, and we tackled the controversy surrounding adoption laws in Utah and the ethics of adoption. And Donna is somebody that has over 26 years of experience in adoption. She shared her perspective on birth mother rights, as well as consent laws and the scrutiny that Utah agencies face on a daily basis. Some of the things that she said in this two-part episode, you really should go listen to it if you're starting the adoption process, because you need to know what all the conversation around Utah is. She said no one should feel pressure to do anything. Every birth mother goes through the grief process. And then she gets into what the grief process is. I suggest you go take a listen for yourself. Then we came back to money on March 21st, 2025. Can you really afford to adopt? In this episode, I sit down with folks from the Gift of Adoption Fund, specifically Brian Murphy and Shanitra Gross, and we tackled one of the biggest questions hopeful adoptive parents ask all the time. Can we afford to adopt? Can we afford to adopt? Well, we talk all things grants, and specifically how Gift of Adoption Fund works. This is an organization I've been working with for years. And through their decades of experience, they really make it clear that money shouldn't be the reason a child goes without a home. And that's really where their stance is coming from. Again, it's not about the parent. It's about the child. One of the things that was said in this episode, if the totality of circumstances suggest a child is at risk of foster care, they're born without a parenting plan, drug addicted, mother is incarcerated, whatever the case may be, that suggests that that child, if not adopted, is really at risk for state involvement. And that's a funding priority for us. The next episode was definitely a more serious episode about adoption and mental health, what every hopeful parent should know. I talk with a good friend of mine about her experience raising a son with schizophrenia. I get to sit down and have a raw conversation with a friend of mine who will remain anonymous, who has had firsthand experience as an adoptee, as an adoptive parent, as a transracial parent, and as somebody who has experienced firsthand mental health on a very serious level and on multiple levels in her family. She speaks about the truth about mental health and the seriousness of mental health. And we really dig in deep. She bravely shares her deeply personal journey navigating mental health with adoption, from uncovering her own biological family's history of schizophrenia to supporting her son's mental health challenges. She sheds light on the realities of genetics, environment, and early intervention. Together, we discuss why love alone isn't always enough, how genetic predispositions can manifest, and the crucial role of early mental health support. This is a very important episode that I suggest everybody listen to. Some of my favorite quotes in this episode. When we adopted our son, it was a closed adoption. And I always said watching him grow was like watching a flower bud start to open. And you just didn't know what that flower was going to look like at the end. And so celebrate each phase of that bud, pulling open, and look for all of that beauty that it holds, because that's really what it looks like. And then another one. Genetics play a huge role. It's sad that there needs to be a genetic component, and then there's a trigger component. And you can't control life because that trigger can be something as simple as the child being bullied, or a car accident, or the death of a grandparent. That triggering factor could be anything. My next episode, What Birth Moms Wish You Knew, with Jessie Mattos on April 2nd. Jessie is a birth mother, a passionate advocate, and director of birth mother programs at Abiding Love Charities. Known online as It Takes a Triad, Jessie brings raw honesty and powerful insight into what it truly means to support every member of the adoption triad. She shares her own adoption journey, the complex emotions that followed placement, and how her healing truly began years later after discovering the power of community and education. She dives into the realities of informed consent, post-adoption grief, and why love is not enough. This is something we have heard over and over and over again. My conversation with Jessie was really raw and awesome. I loved talking to her. And this is one you should watch as well, because I remember she was wearing a fantastic shirt that day. That was just so fun. Here's something that Jessie said in our conversation. So yeah, everyone paints this picture of adoption. It's going to be really beautiful and everything's going to be, perfect because we've wanted this baby for a really long time. And then they bring the baby home and it's a completely different story. And sometimes I think that they're a little embarrassed to admit that they're struggling, or that the relationship doesn't look like what they thought it was going to look like. And that's why you need that community. My next episode on my birthday, April 9th, 2025, it was a big year for me, and an episode that we dive into what everybody wants to know about: substance use, STDs, and scary medical records, a pediatrician's point of view, with our go-to, Dr. Sara Silvestri, or on Instagram, you can find her at The Adoption Doc. In this episode, we discuss the complexities of health and medical concerns in adoption. We explore the definition of a quote unquote healthy child in adoption, the impact of prenatal substance exposure, the importance of prenatal care, and the challenges faced by adoptive parents. The conversation also covers risks associated with STDs and gestational diabetes, as well as practical advice for selecting a pediatrician who understands the unique needs of adopted children. In this episode, Dr. Silvestri says, the studies on marijuana were done on kids who were born in the 70s and 80s for the most part. So that marijuana is completely different than the marijuana that's out there right now. The THC component in marijuana back then was maybe a single-digit percentage, but now you can get marijuana with THC 50% or more. And so again, we're comparing in some ways apples and oranges. Go listen to that episode if you are starting out in adoption and want to know more about exposures. My next episode on April 16th was with a very wise beyond his year kid, really, Wilson Munsterman, who's doing wonderful things in the world of adoption. And this episode is called Your Worth is Where You Put It, a Gen Z adoptee's bold message for parents. I absolutely loved talking with Wilson, literally such an old soul. In this episode of the Adoption Roadmap, this 19-year-old adoptee, who's also an author and advocate, we explored together identity, self-worth, and healing through the lens of adoption. Wilson opens up about his adoption from China, the scar that shaped his early beliefs about himself, and the moment he chose to rewrite his internal narrative. Wilson shares how he went from struggling in silence to finding his voice and using it to uplift others. One of the things that I love that Wilson Munsterman said during our conversation is, and I think every adoptive parent will love hearing this, I don't wish I was raised differently. It's music to our hearts. My next episode on April 23rd with Julie Brumley, another person I found on Instagram who I just fell in love with, her energy. Her episode was called Healing Begins in the Body, the Somatic Side of Adoption. So for all my woo-woo people out there, you will love this conversation with Julie Brumley. We explored how adoption trauma shows up in the body and how somatic healing can help. Julie shares her personal journey from survival to self-discovery, the moment that changed everything, and how early trauma can shape physical and emotional responses in us. We dive into the 7 phases of healing, nervous system regulation, and tools for holding space without trying to fix. This is a must listen for adoptive parents and adoptees. Julie is just so fun to talk to. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. And I love how she dances in her Instagram as well. One of the things that resonated with me that she said in this episode was, it's us feeling like we have to please everyone around us in order to be okay, that will settle us, because once everybody is okay with us, then we're okay. That doesn't work, but that's what the inner critic is trying to do. It's trying to protect us. And so she helps to guide adoptees through this and how they can soothe themselves and silence that inner critic. It's a great episode. My next episode was a special Mother's Day episode where I welcomed back our friends from previous episodes, adoptive mom Francine Appy, birth mom Katie Kinirons, that's how you pronounce it, Mejia, and adoptee Allison Olson. And I moderated. It's called We're Celebrating Mother's Day. It was on May 7th, 2025. And we had a beautiful conversation about Mother's Day from the viewpoint of an adoptee, an adoptive mom, and a birth mom. We discussed the emotional complexities surrounding Mother's Day, the importance of acknowledging birth moms, and the unique perspectives of each of us. We talked about open communication, emotional support, and we shared the journey of motherhood, highlighting our diverse narratives that shape our own adoption experience. And in it, some of the things that were said was, every day is Mother's Day for me. Another person said, there's going to be loss. Expect it. And then finally, another one of our moms said, I hold that space for them. And then as we continue getting closer and closer to today, once again, back to back, actually, I brought back my friend, my go-to, Kerry Hackett, on both 514 and 521. And 514 was an episode that was really preemptive to the Adoption Continuum launch, Founders Launch. And the episode was called So You Adopted and You've Still Got Questions. And there was a part 1 and a part 2. And we really talk about what adoptive parenting has been like for both of us. But we talked about often overlooked topics of post-adoption support and community. We talked about our personal experiences, the evolving nature of our relationships with our children's birth parents, the complexities of emotions as our children grow and get older, the significance of cultural identity and the unique challenges faced by teenage adoptees. We really dive into it, and some of the things that were said in these episodes is you need to be surrounded by people who get you. Another thing that I love that Kerry referred to was that you need a costume change. And she was referring to sometimes you just need to take a little break, kind of like in her daughter's dance performances. When they go for a costume change, we too need a costume change from time to time. Recently, I spoke with another friend who I met years ago on Instagram, and we became fast friends. We have so much in common. My friend, Aida Phillips, who's from Miami, Florida. She is Latina and has been helping Spanish-speaking hopeful parents navigate the world of adoption. And the title of this episode on 528 is What Kept Me Going After 4 Failed Adoptions. We dive into the cultural dynamics within the Hispanic community. Previously, we did it in a previous episode in the Black community, but this time with Aida, we talk about the Hispanic community in adoption, how language barriers and cultural taboos shaped her experience and underscored the need for Spanish language adoption resources. The conversation explored transracial adoption, the importance of representation, and the role of birth parents. And Aida also, she has such a beautiful heart. She also reflects on the power of love, resilience, and identity in building a connected, multicultural family. And one thing I love that she said, and I think my friend Francine Appy would agree with this, Aida said, adoption should be in everyone's vocabulary. I love that, and I couldn't agree more. And I finally wrapped up the season with an amazing trailblazer that I felt really lucky to talk with. It's called The Psychology of Adoption, and it's with Dr. Joyce Maguire Pavao. She is really somebody who is a trailblazer in adoption. This episode was just on 6/18 of 2025. And in this episode, I sit down with Dr. Pavao. She is not only a pioneer in the world of adoption, she's an adoptee herself and the author of The Family of Adoption. She has over 5 decades of clinical experience, and she has really challenged the idea that adoption is something to be fixed and instead invites us to see it as a lifelong experience that demands truth, openness, and deep emotional care. In this conversation, we unpack the psychology of adoption, the concept of ambiguous loss, and the invisible grief so often overlooked. She shares practical guidance for adoptive parents. We talk about how to talk about adoption, how to recognize adoption-related trauma, and how to support our children through their adoption journey without over pathologizing them. This was such an amazing conversation that really taught me a lot. And I've been learning adoption for the past 13 years. And she really brought some ideas to me that really made great sense and that I will take to heart as I continue to parent my son, who is a teenager. But some of my favorite episodes, and I can't encourage you enough if you're an adoptive parent to go listen to this episode. She says a couple things that really, I loved this. Parents often think that their kids are fine because nothing's being said, but silence isn't peace. It's protection. She also says, anger is a cover for sadness. If we don't recognize that, we miss the deeper need. Well, that wraps up a summary of all of my conversations with my amazing guests. I want to say thank you for participating, for listening, and for reviewing. Hint, hint, if you haven't done it yet, I would really appreciate it. Go listen to the episodes that really spoke to you as I reviewed them. They're all fantastic in their own right, and for sure, you'll walk away having learned something from each and every one of these amazing individuals who lent me their time and their golden nuggets, as I like to call it. It's been a little over a year and 100 episodes. Thank you so much for listening, and tune in again for season 3 of the Adoption Roadmap podcast coming in September of 2025. Until then, bye-bye. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Adoption Roadmap podcast. If you did, I have a few favors to ask of you. First, please hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And while you're at it, I'd love to hear your takeaways. Please write a review and let me know what you liked. And if you have a question or a suggestion on what you'd like to hear, I'd love to hear that too. Please shoot me an email at support@rgadoptionconsulting.com and let me know what you'd like to hear about. And if you have a question, I may just answer it online. Thanks again for listening. Tune in every Wednesday and Friday morning for a brand new episode of the Adoption Roadmap podcast. Until next time, bye-bye.